What's cracking, ladies and gentlemen? 49 coming out with another community shoutcast for the AGI Gaming Dota 2 National New Zealand Tournament. Just loading into the best of 3 for, I believe it's round 2 of the losers bracket. TDT up against, I believe it's SSCT, so we'll be determining which team gets eliminated and which team gets to continue on. So it'll be interesting to see how both teams perform. I've casted both teams before. I haven't casted the best of 3 so far, so would like a game to be able to reach that far in. Just waiting for both teams to choose their drafter. Looks like TDT have first pick, so it'll be interesting to see what hero they decide to let slip through the first banning phase. We have been seeing a lot of Lycan and Tidehunter bans. TDT, a team that are fairly confident with their Tidehunter. It's a team that employed the Tidehunter Enigma combo in the last game that I cast them in. So it could be something they might be looking to do for this game, just because it provides a huge amount of teamfight presence, a lot of pushing power. Doombringer, once again, first ban material, just because of how versatile and how powerful he is at all stages of the game. First ban coming out from SSCT. Looks like NZ Rain was the offlane player last time I casted. He's going to be the one in the drafting spot. Whereas for TDT, Nado Squirrel, who I believe went by the name Nado Book earlier, bans out Ember Spirit. Very rare to see an Ember Spirit ban, especially with the 8.1 balance change that nerfed the Sleight of Fist damage by 33%, so it's now up only 80 damage at max level, as well as the Searing Chain nerf, which is the real nerf that significantly impacted his ability, his versatility, his skill build order. He now has to commit 2 points to the Searing Chains. So at level 1, Searing Chains is only a 1 second snap. So it means that you can no longer simply have Searing Chains to 1.1 to then choose to max out the Flame Guard, then max out the Sleight of Fist. You need to at least invest 2 points into it for the skill to be useful. So the prevalent build for the Ember Spirit in the current meta is to go for 2, 1, and then 4. And then turn back around and max out the Sleight of Fist. Lycanthrope banned out by TDT, so they're fearing that Death Ball push power, and for good reason. Solo played a fantastic Lycanthrope in the series up against Team AGI, so it was against the organizers of the tournament's team. They were able to do a huge amount of work, with Solo actually going for a conventional hard carry build on the Lycan, so opting not to go for Necro 3, instead went for BKB straight up into the MKB, did a lot of DPS that way, and simply just ran around right-clicking people down. So they ban out the Bat Rider, so fearing their initiation powers, and that means that TDT, they have access to Tinker, as well as the Pandarian Brewmaster and the Faceless Void. Those are 3 very powerful heroes that are often picked up in the first picking stage. Invoker also, he used to be on that list, but now with the recent nerf to Cold Snap, he's no longer that high priorities. Invoker's probably a hero that you pick much later on, when you've drafted the rest of your team, so you can build your team around the Invoker, and that's only if you've got an exceptionally good Invoker player. Just because he's a much more risky pick. Invoker's a hero that needs not only a lot of gold, but a lot of EXP, so he usually has to function in a solo lane, and with the nerf to his Cold Snap doing a lot less damage, much more difficult for him to be that amazing 1v1 laner that he used to be. So Tidehunter being picked up for TDT, looks like it might be Notro, who was the offline player in the last game I casted, going to be playing that Tidehunter. But they've given away, but that means that if they decide to go for a hero combo such as the SD Mirana or the Mirana Bane Elemental, or they could choose to pick up 2 other heroes such as the Tinker and the Faceless Void. It's always interesting to note that with this recent patch, actually second pick probably has an advantage over first pick, just because there's so many teams, there's so many top tier heroes that usually make it past the first banning stage. So Invoker being first pick over for SSCT, as well as Ancient Apparition. So Invoker, they're just going to decide to gamble with the Invoker. Judging by the AA pick, it could be a Quas-Wex Invoker, since you could use the Tornado EMP combo to set up for the Ancient Apparition Ice Blast. But that being said, Quas Exalt Invoker is absolutely terrifying to lane against, just because you've got the Exalt damage, which nullifies Invoker's biggest weakness, which is low base damage. It also gives you a lot of pushing capability if you decide to go for the Zoo Necro 3 build, where you go Tread Boots into a Midas to a Necro 3 as soon as possible. You start grouping up and pushing down towers, and if you're able to land that Deafening Blast meatball combination, you can do so much damage, you can just assassinate people. Mirana being picked up by TDT, but now that's moving on to the second banning stage, so they've left themselves very open, very easy to be able to counteract that Mirana pickup. But at the same time, by picking up Mirana this early on, it forces the enemy team to ban out Bane as well as the Shadow Demon, so it means that they're forced to either choose 2 bans, or they have to pick up the one of the heroes themselves, so you're forcing the enemy team to react to your draft. So if they have a good enough Mirana player, or if Mirana's going to be playing in that roaming 4 position role where we saw a player from our team, NG, he was simply able to run around even without any kind of setup, consistently land these arrows, as a rotating Mirana support and cause so much ruckus. If you've got an exceptionally skilled Mirana player, you still have that option of being able to rotate around, in which case you pigeonhole the enemy draft into forcing them to counteract the combo that you have lined up. Faceless Void being banned out, and for very good reason. Invoker and Ancient Apparition synergize so well with Faceless Void's Chronosphere, just because it provides Invoker all the setup he needs for his Chaos Meteor if he decides to go into Quas Exalt, or if he goes into Quas Wex for the EMP to land. The Tornado also provides easy setup, since if enemy heroes clump up for a second and they're caught by the Tornado, Faceless Void leaps in, throws up the Chronosphere, and then Ancient Apparition follows up with the Ice Blast. Faceless Void also has a lot of flexibility. Nyx Assassin instead being banned out, so they're deciding not to fall into TDT's hands. Maybe they know that TDT have an exceptionally good Mirana player, or maybe they simply don't. The other heroes that prioritize banning out. So TDT, they know that the most likely the mid lane hero has been picked up with the Invoker, as well as the Ancient Apparition. So one of the support heroes has been picked up. Ancient Apparition is usually the secondary support hero, or the 4-position role. They'll be picking a primary support hero, so they could be something like a Shadow Shaman, or that would be a fairly greedy draft. In that case, Ancient Apparition becomes the 5, and Shadow Shaman becomes the 4, just because Ancient Apparition, even without items, is still a threat with the Ice Blast. So TDT really deliberating. They could also choose to start banning out offlaners, but with the Tidehunter pickup, there are very few offlaners that can actually go toe-to-toe with the Tidehunter, just because he's so effective at controlling the lane with the Anchor Smash, providing the base damage reduction. 2 points up in Kraken Shot provides him a free poor man shield, as well as a way to be able to escape any debuffs and snares. 4th ban coming out from SSCT. Will be interesting to see who they choose to ban out. They might choose to ban out the Bane, in which case they force the SD pickup, or they might choose to ban out the SD and force the Bane pickup. And they choose to completely disregard the Mirana altogether and carry on with their draft, in which case they'll play to their strengths, as opposed to nullifying the strengths of the enemy team. One of the reasons why a lot of people could say that you could lose the game at the drafting stage and 2 teams are of equal skill. The drafting stage adds another layer of strategy into it, since you have to consider all the possible avenues of approach the enemy team can take with their picks and with their bans, and you want to try to read their draft while at the same time making your draft hard to read. If you become too reactive to the enemy players' draft, the enemy drafters, then you leave yourself open. And so they instead ban out Morphling. Very surprising ban. It's very surprising that they chose to ban out the Morphling, considering that there's no real innate synergy with the lineup they have so far. You do have the split pushing presence from the Morphling, you do have the Titan of the Ravage set up. They picked up Wraith King, so Wraith King AA support duo. Very powerful combination, just because Ancient Apparition provides what Wraith King lacks, which is an extra burst of damage to go for those kills with a Chilling Touch. Ice Vortex provides an extra form of amplification, and the Wraith Fire Blast is enough setup for the Cold Feet to proc. Wraith King, once he hits level 6 and has that reincarnate active, he pretty much becomes a retard magnet. He runs into the enemy team, gets in their face, becomes an annoyance, forces them to focus him down, and when he dies, if he's got reincarnate, he's providing a massive 75% snare for up to 4 seconds of the enemy team. That buys the rest of the team plenty of time to be able to stand tall and just keep hitting the enemy team. So they will want to synergize the Wraith King with another carry hero, or at least another hero of some kind of physical DPS. So for instance, if they picked up a Luna that have an incredibly aggressive tri lane that they could use to clash Tri-v-Tri, it's the Wraith King initiates with the stun. Ancient Apparition follows up with either the Vortex or the Cold Feet, depending on how his level priority. And they're going for the Bane Elemental, so Mirana Bane. Very powerful combination. And a Tri-v-Tri situation, it's not as effective, since if you haven't experienced enough team, you can simply juggle the sleep. But that being said, the advantage of the Bane Elemental is, unlike the SD, where you have to time it precisely with the disruption of the Soul Catcher, the arrow has to hit right as the disruption wears off. The Bane is a lot easier to set up. You sleep him, you throw the arrow, and if you rotate over into the mid lane or into the solo lane, well, there's only one hero and there's no one else to be able to juggle the sleep off. Very easy to be able to set up kills. So the Bane Mirana combinations are much lower skill ceiling. It's a lot easier to execute, but the SD Bane is almost completely impossible to counter if you time it off properly, unless if the hero has some kind of immediate Twitch escapability, such as a Slark with a Dark Pact. But even then, you have to time it. If you're able to time it well enough, it can ensure that they never get any of the defensive abilities off. It's a very powerful combination, often utilized in the pro scene. So it means that with access to a Bane, Mirana could be run in the 4-position role. Bane is to 5, so you've got the 2 supports. Or Mirana also can be run as the farmer. Shadow Demon's actually going to be picked up, so it looks like it's going to be a 1-position Wraith King. So Ancient Apparition and Shadow Demon, not bad combination. The disruption is enough to ensure that the Cold Feet procs. The only drawback is the lack of initiation range, but Ancient Apparition with the Ice Vortex can provide an extra little bit of movement speed advantage for Shadow Demon to walk up and throw out the disruptions. That has a very slight snare. But most likely will be Wraith King who will be initiating if they happen to engage Tri-v-Tri. Or otherwise, SD could come in, disrupt someone, Wraith King runs up, follows up with the Wraith Fire Blast. Then you have the Cold Feet on top of that. Death Prophet going mano a mano in the mid lane up against the Invoker. Death Prophet should have a significant advantage. It more or less forces the Invoker to go for a Cross Exort unless he is extremely on point with his Tornado EMP combination. Otherwise, it's the only way the Invoker can hope to contest the lanes against the DP is if he's able to land a few EMPs, drain the DP of mana, which is a primary mode of controlling the lane, and then pray to God that he's able to get enough CS against her until the mid game kicks in, team fights start to happen. 5th ban's about to come out. All they have to do now is ban tri-lane carries that they don't want to deal with. So they want to ban out heroes with high mobility. They could frustrate the Wraith King, since Wraith King's biggest weakness is he's very easy to kite. Or if they believe that it's the one position Mirana, which is highly unlikely just because they don't have a secondary carry to rely on. Mirana tapers off very strongly as a one position hero just because she needs so much farm. And they wisely ban out the Luna, who provides a massive amount of damage, especially with a all-ranged tri-lane. The Lunar Blessing provides a huge increase in damage, not quite as much as the Chilling Touch, but the added bonus of the Luna is it also provides the bonus night vision, so 1800 vision at all times, which is quite significant, especially 4 minutes into the game when nighttime kicks in and vision is limited. Clockwork Goblin being banned out, not so much because he counteracts the Tidehunter, since Tidehunter still does very well against the Clock. It's actually a fairly even matchup. If Clockwork is on point with his cogs, he could cog push back the Tidehunter and use it to drain his mana pool. But if Clockwork is against that tri-lane, he's very difficult to bring down, since he can control the creep equilibrium by using cogs in the creep wave, by cog blocking, as well as the cogs himself, making it difficult to close in for a kill. Since Bane has a very short range, he won't be able to hit Clockwork Goblin when he activates his cogs. Venomancer is going to be picked up. Very interesting draft coming out from SSCT. We could be seeing a core Venomancer, incredibly powerful hero. In that case, we could even be seeing something funky like a mid Venomancer and an offlane Invoker going 1v1 against the Tidehunter with them clashing tri-v-tri. Well, otherwise, Venomancer in the offlane position, very, very easy to bring down, just because he's fairly slow and he doesn't have an escape mech. Venomancer instead relies on his high offense capability, since if you do kill him, if he gets his poison over off, if he has a few points up in the poison stink, you can at least make sure that he brings one of them down with you. Otherwise, we could even be seeing something funky like yeah, we could be seeing the Invoker going 1v1 in the offlane.
Reserve time.
Just because Invoker has a bit more flexibility in the offlane position, since he could always choose to go for Ghost Walk. If he's going 1v1 up against the Tidehunter, he'll be doing fairly effectively. Or the other way, they could also have the converse where Venomancer is going 1v1 up against the Tidehunter, in which case he'll be able to harass him through Kraken Shell by utilizing Poison Sting as well as the Gale to keep his distance. As long as Tidehunter isn't able to get a few Anchor Smashes off on him, Venomancer should have a very easy time controlling the lane. And Venomancer works very well as a counter pick to the Death Prophet, just because it shuts down a push. All you have to do is keep spamming the Venomancer wards. And it means that Death Prophet spirits, she's forced to manually target each of the wards with a spirit since they're completely magic immune. Also means that if Venomancer is very on point with his plays, he could use the Venomancer wards to shut down and disable Tidehunter's Blink Dagger. They decide to go for Gyrocopter, so they're going for a very powerful wombo combo lineup. The Tidehunter Ravage is set up for the cooldown, and you've got the Moonlight Shadow to provide that covering fire for them to be able to initiate or to be able to disengage in these fights. And NZ Rain, who is traditionally SSCT's offlane player, going to be on that Venomancer, so we could be seeing an offlane Venomancer. They might want to dodge that, Clash Tri-V-Tri that in that case to make sure it's Venomancer up against Notra on the offlane Tidehunter, since that's a much more favorable matchup, whereas Tidehunter, he could go 1v3 against that lineup, and while he'll have a difficult time, he still has a potential to recover. It's a lot more difficult to bring down than the Venomancer. But that being said, Shadow Demon with the Soul Catcher tears through Tidehunter, since he relies on the Kraken Shell to be able to purge off debuffs as well as the innate tankiness he has. And so Soul Catcher provides that extra damage amplification, especially with the incredibly aggressive carry that they have with the Wraith King. It will be a difficult lane for either offlaners. They really do want to clash Tri-V-Tri, in which case take advantage of the fact that the Dire side have a much more powerful tri-lane than the Radiant side. There's a lot less margin for error, since you can always juggle the sleep. Gyrocopter is a very limited range, it's very squishy, so they catch out the Gyrocopter with the disruption. They can follow up the Soul Catcher, Wraith Fire Blast, Chilling Touch, and quickly burst him down before his teammates can respond. Quick pause coming out, just going to introduce the players from both teams. Over on SSCT, we have NZ Rain, usually the offlane player on the Venomancer, so I'm going to say it's going to be the offlane Venomancer, but I could be wrong, he could also be mid. KW7142 over in the Invoker, most likely going to be the mid Invoker. With this kind of lineup, Cross Wex would work very well, but that being said, they could decide to go for the much more safer Cross Exort, since Cross Exort nullifies Invoker's biggest weakness, which is his a lack of early game presence. Quas Exalt means you've got the Sunstrike, which actually synergizes very well with the Disruptor. So Disruption followed up with the Sunstrike provides an extra burst of damage. You go into the Zoo build with the Double Forge Spirits and the Necronomicon. You could use that to start taking towers. And considering how strong their early and mid game is, if they decided to go for that Quas Exalt build, they could take a lot of towers and snowball their lead off that. Or if they decide to counteract the teamfight presence coming out from TDT, he could go Quas Wex, and if he's on point with his Tornado EMPs, he could use that to really disrupt the teamfight power coming out from TDT, since they're a team that, based off their draft, they really want to fight 5v5. They want to group up and take towers as quickly as possible. Double Smoke coming out from Ancient Apparition. Lucky Shots over on the Shadow Demon. Enlon, the 5 position player, over in the AA. Although in this case, I suppose he'd be the 4th position with SD being the 5. And Solo, the carry player, over on the Wraith King. Meanwhile, over for Team TDT, Notra, the retard magnet for the team, over in the Tidehunter. He's the sacrificial lamb over in the off lane. Going to be having a difficult time as they decide to clash, if they decide to dodge the tri-lane. The understudy carry player over in the Gyrocopter, Nado Squirrel, who I believe was the drafter for the team, up on the Mirana, so he's going to be the 4th position Mirana. Crap Pack up on the Bane Elemental, so he's going to be the 5th position. And in the mid lane, we see Iwalk over in the Death Prophet.
30 seconds.
And Invoker's immediately leveled up the Exalt, so he's taking no chances. He knows that if he goes Quas Wex, there's too much that could go wrong. He has to be able to consistently land the EMP to the drain DP of mana. He needs to be able to find some way to be the harasser out of lane in order to ensure that he can get last hits. Quas Exalt means that he doesn't have to be quite as worried, because he's got the base damage from the Exalt to ensure that he at least contest a few last hits in lane. Because Invoker has an excellent animation compared to Death Prophet. Death Prophet's highly reliant on her higher base damage. He'll be able to outlast hit the Invoker, and it looks like Safety Ward immediately dewarded, so never mind, that was the Venomancer ward. So NZ Rain going to be the offlane position, no boots up on him, so it'll be very surprising to see what he chooses to do against this offlane position. If the Radiant supports as well as the carry are extremely good at controlling creep equilibrium, Venomancer will get absolutely nothing, and he's got no comeback mechanic. Unlike the Tidehunter who could stack and clear out Ancients, or even go into the jungle if he really has to. Venomancer without levels can't do anything at all. So this mid matchup will be really crucial. It'll also be good to see how the support players decide to determine the offlane position. If they're able to control the creep equilibrium, prevent the creep wave from pushing up past this point. And creep wave is always in this area. Without the safety ward, NZ Rain has to constantly play back, otherwise he's at risk of death. So the understudy will be able to get a lot of farm uncontested. It looks like the Exalt build's really paying off for the Invoker. He's actually got 2 last hits and 2 denies compared to the Death Prophet, who's only got 1. Death Prophet's finally called it up with another deny. But the superior animation of Invoker giving him that edge now that he doesn't have to worry about the base attack of the DP, since he has just as much damage as she does and not a little bit more. And once he gets a few more points up in the Exalt, it's going to be more and more difficult for the Death Prophet to be able to contest the lane. However, she still can do the traditional Death Prophet thing, which is to keep throwing out the Crypt Swarm. But Invoker can survive this a lot better than most, just because he's got the Quas sustainability. So Notra, boots first on them this time. Safety ward's been placed, has not been dewarded by the support players. But there are 2 smokes up on the Ancient Apparition. Ancient Apparition went Cold Feet at 1 as opposed to Chilling Touch. 9 out of 10 times Chilling Touch, especially if you're functioning in the tri-lane support, is a lot more efficient. Just because Cold Feet at 1, very unlikely to proc, and even if it does proc, you could just kill them a lot faster with a Chilling Touch. Especially since you already have spadefuls of lockdown, you put a disruption to get in position, followed with the Ray Fire Blast. But that being said, Notra, he's giving them nothing with the boots. Doing the best that he can to be the leech XP while not taking any kind of damage. NZ Rain still level 1, not a single point of experience. Great play coming out from the support players, though at the moment they're not really accomplishing all too much. They might want to place an aggressive ward here to be able to spot any movements coming out from the Venomancer, in which case they could then choose to rotate mid and go for kills over in the Invoker. Invoker hasn't gone for that value point in Wex yet, so he doesn't have Ghost Walk, and if you do force him to go for that value point in Wex, you're delaying the progression of his other abilities. Invoker, you want to be as efficient as possible with your level ups. Notra going toe-to-toe up against Solo. It's one of the advantages of having Tidehunter as an offlane hero. It's the reason why he's currently the most powerful offlane hero in the game, well, with the current meta, is just because against the melee carry, you can't leave him alone without support, since he'll be able to not only do a lot of harassment damage, but prevent him from being the last hit. So it means that the support players, they actually have counted his safety ward, so they're in a great position to be able to go for a lot more aggressive plays. But the creep equilibrium hasn't been controlled effectively, so Notra, he's getting Spadefall is a free experience, but the same thing is happening for NZ Rain, who's now finally about to just hit level 2, or the goal he's about to get. The advantage of having the Venomancer in the offlane position, however, is the fact that if he is able to get some kind of early levels, he makes it very difficult for you to be able to push down that tier 1 tower. Against the lineup that relies on snowballing, like the Deathboard lineup that TDT have, the longer you delay the first tower that they're able to take, the bigger window of opportunity you have to exploit their weakness in split pushing, their weakness in early engagement and ganks. Death Prophet going for the very traditional build. 0 into the silence, he doesn't necessarily need it at the moment, just choosing to max out the Crypt Swarm as well as the Witchcraft to maximize the efficiency of his Crypt Swarm as well as his Exorcism. Invoker hanging very far back. He's got a level 2 Sunstrike coming up. They have to lead with the Shadow Demon, but unfortunately they chose to lead with the Ancient Apparition, so that means that the Smoke Gank is completely wasted. Bit of a misplay coming out from the boys over in SSCT. You never have the Ancient Apparition initiate a Smoke Gank like that, just because he's got nowhere to lock them in place. Death Prophet laughs at your cold feet and simply just walks away. And that's 100 gold wasted from the smoke. Also wastes a lot of time. That means the solo's now in a much more difficult lane in order to find CS. Notra has a huge window of opportunity before the supports rotate back in to his lane to be able to get as much farm experience as possible. He's now got a level 2 Anchor Smash. At level 5 you choose to either go for a point in Gush or go for a point up in Anchor Smash. Usually a point up in Gush this early on is a lot more safe since it gives you a bit more killing power. With the movement speed snare coming up from the Gush as well as the extra burst of damage. Invoker being heavily harassed out with only 1 point up in Quas. He doesn't have that much regeneration. He's actually been, all his regeneration has been burned out. So Death Prophet actually started to claw her way back into this mid lane. Was having a very difficult start at the first level, mostly due to the fact that Invoker had superior creep equilibrium control with the creep blocking. But now she's actually starting to wrest control away from him, and if she's able to gain rune control, which she most likely will, unless the support players are constantly camping runes, looks like another Squirrel's actually going in for a gank, throws down Arrow. Arrow might actually hit. Arrow hits Invoker right in the face, and that's going to be first blood. A few more right clicks, whilst the Crypt Swarm, and this lane just got that much more difficult for the Invoker. Since Death Prophet now has level 6, Invoker is level 5.5, so you've got Exorcism up. It means that she'll be able to bully you out of lane. When you go back to regenerate, she then pops Exorcism, takes your tower. But Ended Rain, there is a consequence of that, is he's getting a lot of free EXP. Nowhere near as much as Notra, who's level 4.5. He'll be hitting level 5 very shortly. Even without a safety wall, just because he's got 2 points up in Kraken Shell, it's going to be very difficult for the enemy team to be able to go for a kill attempt on him, unless they time it perfectly. But even then, with the 2 points up in Kraken Shell, most likely you'll be able to purge off the Kraken Shell. And while I say that, kill attempt happening in the bottom lane. Looks like Sleep into Arrow, followed up with a Rocket Barrage. Gyrocopter, while he is a very squishy hero, he has a huge amount of burst damage with the Rocket Barrage. And this time he's choosing to go for the Flat Cannon. And he's got the I think, is that the Emperor's Cannon? Cosmetic for him. I'll have to ask one of my friends. They know a bit more about this than I do. Notra eats a stun to the face, but he's very happy with that. It's a lot of wasted mana. As a Wraith King, you never want to use your stun unless it could guarantee a kill. Just because you have such a limited mana pool, and mana pool in the early stage of the game determines everything that you can and cannot do. Without your stun, you're just a slow melee creep. With your stun, you become a lot more dangerous, and especially once you hit level 6, if you don't have enough mana for your ultimate, especially since he's choosing to go for the crit build, so choosing to opt for treads, Phase Boots is usually preferable on Wraith King, unless you have a lot of lockdown that you can rely on, or if you're choosing to go for the Blink Dagger. Venomancer also showing off his cosmetics with the really cool Plague Wards. Choosing the maxed out the Plague Ward, so he knows that he can't go for the greedier build where you go for 2 points in Sting, then you go for maxed out wards, or he could choose to go for second point up in Sting at level 5. But while I say that, another Smoke Gank rotation, this time taking a long route around. Lucky Shots as well as Enlon. This time, Lucky Shots leading the way, so they've learned from their mistakes, which is all you could really ask for. They're going to rotate over into the tri lane and try to pick off the Gyrocopter, since the understudy, he's been left to his own devices for a long time, and Venomancer knows this. The supports, they haven't been seen for a while. Understudy backs off. He backs off right into their waiting hands. Cold Feet's about to pop. Gale, he drops the corner. Unfortunately, Gale misses. They can actually turn this around. This is an absolute catastrophe. Enlon cops a lot of damage. A double cooldown's going to kill them all off. NZ Rain takes a fall. Sunstrike catches, doesn't do all too much. And Enlon also dies to the Flat Cannon. You just fed a triple kill to one of the hardest carriers in the game. The players over in SSCT shrugging their head right now as TDT able to make them pay for every inch of ground they take with blood, sweat, and tears. Wraith King on the top lane being bullied out by Notro, is just able to use the Anchor Smash to prevent him from CSing, choosing to max out the Anchor Smash. So you'll be having a level 4 Anchor Smash very shortly. Iwalk actually chose to go for Arcane Boots. Looks like she's going to be the mech carrier. Usually you prefer to see when the Death Prophet goes for Arcane Boots, it's usually because she's rushing a Bloodstone, so it gives you a lot more efficient build-up, since otherwise Phase Boots is a lot more effective. One of the things she could be doing right now if she wants to be a bit more ballsy is walk a lot closer to the tower, since it decreases the travel time for the spirits, but Invoker doesn't even try to go for the deny, so that's a free tower in favor of the Radiant Sun. They're in a great start for game number 1. Over in the top lane, Notro once again just passively leeching EXP. He can be playing a lot more active, but he doesn't know what the supports are, so he's playing it very safe. And Wraith King, even with Reincarnate, he's got to be very careful, just because one Anchor Smash completely cripples his attacking ability, so it means it's going to be much more difficult for him to go for last hits, or for denies. And if he eats too many of those Anchor Smashes, Ty could always try to commit with the Ravage or with a Gush, and try to force out the Reincarnate, since if you blow a level 1 Reincarnate for nothing, that's a huge cooldown timer. Whenever Reincarnate is up, and you've got your team grouped up as 5, assuming that the Reincarnate isn't going to be interrupted in any way, so long as he does, there's no anti-mana spells he has to deal with, you pretty much can win that engagement. Just because while he draws fire, Invoker's hanging in the wings, doing a lot of damage. But the Exalt build, Invoker actually right-clicks incredibly hard, but Iwalk doing very well to be able to control the Invoker. That first blood, with the rotation coming out from Nardo Squirrel, really helping shape things up. He's almost got a Mechanism. So they're going for a very strong early game at Deathball push. Bane Elemental has Arcane Boots 9 minutes into the game. That's just off the basis of the tower, as well as the kill that he's been involved in. When your 5 position hero has Arcane Boots and your enemy support heroes just barely have Boots, huge advantage in favor of the enemy team. Notrona has Ravage as well as Arcane Boots, so he's farming up towards his Blink Dagger. He's got to be very careful at the moment since the supports are there. Shadow Demon going for a very conventional build, choosing to max out the Soul Catcher. Notra is able to use the Anchor Smash to be able to farm up creeps as well as push out the wave. But they're going in for a gank. Wraith Fire Blast lands. Sunstrike as well. Cold Feet. Sunstrike lands. Disruption actually keeping himself a bit of life there. Rotate can actually use a Ravage right now. And supports are rotating. He gets a 3-man Anchor Smash. And even though they killed 1, they're going to lose 2. Or maybe even 3. Never mind. With the Reincarnate. Now the score, if he's able to land that error, pops the Reincarnate, but he's going to be very careful right now. If he eats a Wraith Fire Blast in the face, he will die. And so he does so. Gladly trades his life away. They might be able to get a kill on solo. Another Crypt Swarm, no mana for another one. He has to use the bottle charges, but the creeps are hitting him. If he uses the bottle charges for 1 more Crypt Swarm, never mind. Eats a stun to the face. Nightmare keeping Solo alive. They're forced to back off. They do blow the Reincarnate. In exchange for the Sunstrike, actually might even be a kill. And Invoker, typical Invoker contribution to a fight. Press Sunstrike and Crab Pack. He goes too far for it. He's overcommitted for this. He's not going to get this kill. He's being juked out. Great recognition from Solo, realizing that the pure damage from the Brain Set would be enough to kill him. Notra really wishes he had a point up and Gush right now, as Lucky Shots walks away, but never mind. He's able to catch him out. The 400 AoE from the Anchor Smash, enough to bring him down. Game of Throws on as both teams trade tit for tat. But Tidehunter, good recognition from him. That disruption actually kept him alive. If they hadn't disrupted him, they simply continued to right click. It would have killed him. Arrow flies out, completely whiffs. And Long hang around the side. Doesn't have enough mana to do anything aside from maybe dropping Ice Vortex. So he's got to be very careful. Point up and Gush over for the Tidehunter. So he's going to be looking to max out that Kraken Shell next, just so he could constantly stay right in the thick of these fights. He's actually chose to pick up a very early Planeswalker's Cloak. Questionable item build, considering the fact that Tidehunter's tanky enough with a few points up in Kraken Shell. You don't need to invest in any more survivability. You want to get your Blink Dagger as soon as possible if you want to take these fights. Or if you're going to be playing that utility role, you want to pick up the Mechanism. But in this case, since Death Prophet's picking up the mech, looks like they're having a few internet issues. And Death Prophet looks like she's got it flying out to her. Never mind, with that death, no. Her mechanism's been delayed a bit. In the bottom lane, NZ Rain. Now that heroes have rotated away, he's done a slowly split push and pressure the enemy tower. He hasn't been off to a great start. This offlane Venomancer pick hasn't really worked out so far. But they're doing the best that they can in terms of gold difference. About 4,500 gold lead in favor of TDT. That's mostly attributed to the kills as well as the towers. And from the look of it, the efficiency on the CS. Arrow flies out. Gonna miss. And in terms of EXP, 4,000 EXP lead. That's just due to the kills, as well as the fact that they've got a lot more solo EXP at the moment. Invoker has been forced to leave the mid lane. So he's at level 8 right now. And Notra almost level 9. When the offlane hero is out leveling your mid hero, you know that say that the game isn't going to crash out. Death Prophet 2-level advantage over the Invoker, just due to the kills that he's been involved in, as well as the solo EXP, since he's able to consistently harass the Invoker out of the lane. Plague Ward's delaying the push, so good recognition coming out from NZ Rain. He knows that all he has to do is try to keep his towers alive for as long as possible. No Trump pushing up forward to Solo. Solo no longer has the Reincarnate. Looks like he's going for a very traditional Armlet Medigian build. Usually nowadays, when you see Wraith King in that farming position role, you usually go Treads into Blink as soon as possible, since Blink Dagger resolves all of his issues, which is a gap closer. Wraith King is very easy to kite, even more so if he goes Treads. So when you see a Tread build up on a Wraith King, you usually see Blink Dagger as his first or second big item, just to give yourself that ability to be able to close the distance. And it also means that once you have Reincarnate, and when you have Reincarnate up, you're not afraid of no ghost. You can blink in, tank a lot of fire, force them to engage on you, and the rest of your team comes in, cleans up once you die. Venomancer now has Arcane Boots. It's going to be using that to try to do as much split push as possible over in the bottom lane while they continue to commit. If they continue to, if no one rotates over to the bottom lane, that's going to be a free tower. Exorcism is about to wear off, so they can't keep pushing. Death Prophet's so shy off the mechanism. She really wants to be careful until she has that, and that drastically increases survivability. Looks like Notra's rotating up to the bottom lane, but unfortunately Anchor Smash doesn't do shit against the Plague Wards. Invoker's also present. 1 cross point shot. Actually, the Gale catches out Notra, but Notra with Kraken Shell, he's not afraid of no Ghost. He knows that he's got Ravage, so they don't want to dive this. Ice Wall. Flies an arrow, actually catches out NZ Rain, catching those arrows like he's playing baseball. NZ Gear returns around, throws out a few more right clicks. Brain Sap's enough to bring out the Venomancer. Cooldown's going to drop over an Invoker. First one will hit. Second one won't be the latch as well. Unless they decide to commit the Ravage, they can actually choose to commit the Ravage if they decide to TP in. And Notra notices he's hanging very far forward, cancels the TP, and they're going to take a tail one in the bottom lane. Great engagement coming out from TDT. Recognizing that the enemy team was not grouped as 5, they're playing to the strength of their lineup, which is to fight as 5 when your ultimates are up. Use your ultimates to pick them off one at a time, and then take the tower. So similar to the Na'Vi style of play, you fight them in their tower, you kill them, then you take their tower, and then you repeat. You're going to get as much of an early lead as possible, and try to use that to leverage yourself into a better position in the mid-game. Tidehunter backing away a bit. Midas up over on the Invoker. Arrow flies out. Whiffs over on NZ Rain. Nado Squirrel been fairly on point with his arrow so far. Hasn't had to rely too much on the Bane setup. Gyrocopter going for Helmet Dominator into the Yasha. Very, very greedy build coming up from him. You usually see one or the other, never both, just because it's too much greed. The Yasha is usually an effective enough farming item, but with the Gyrocopter, Helmet Dominator is an excellent pickup very early on, because it lets you start Ancient stacking. And from the look of it, he's stacked up once so far. And he's going for S and Y once again. I think it was TDT that did this in the last game as well. They seem to have a strange obsession with S and Y over in the Gyrocopter. Not really too sure why. It doesn't actually give you all too much compared to having an early BKB. If you have an early BKB, like a Luna, you could fight as 5, take these early engagements and completely decimate the enemy team just off the basis of your spells. Moonlight Shadow being popped, they know something's not quite right. Lucky shots fleeing as well as Ended Rain. Cooldown drops, there was a point blank arrow, but point blank arrow isn't effective anymore. Poison Over drops on 3. Notice hanging out the Rav, he's going to commit it, catches out 3 with a Nightmare keeping Invoker when you do anything in the background. Fantastic play coming out from TDT. And the understudy has to be a bit careful, he doesn't die to the poison, never mind, he's got enough HP. And they should be the group up and start doing some chip damage on the tier 2. But while that happens in the top lane, Solo, he really hasn't been active at all, which is very questionable considering the fact that the reason why you pick a Wraith King is so that he could be active very early on. If you wanted to play this full Protect 1 strategy, you would be better off picking a carry such as a Spectre, who could participate from afar, or even someone like a Faceless Void if you wanted to get someone really farmed and look to try to leverage the mid-game to your favor. But having a Wraith King who's one of the most powerful early game carries in the game, especially with a Reincarnate up, is not accomplishing all too much in the top lane. He's just passively right-clicking. He could even have pushed the tower down by now. He does have his Armlet Madigan up. Maybe he's saving up for until he has a Blink Dagger before he starts to really engage. But that's hurting the rest of his team. Because they know that TDT, they want to fight as 5. That's what they excel at. And that's what they're going to keep doing until the enemy team have lost too many towers, have lost too much map control to be able to effectively fight. And Mirana wants to smoke up. Arcane Boots up on him as well. Death Prophet. Now with the Mechanical, it'll be interesting to see what item she chooses to go for. Probably could be seeing something like a Yule Scepter, or she could even choose to dismantle her Arcane Boots and go towards a Bloodstone. But since she already has a mech, you probably don't want to go for a Bloodstone as well. It's too much greed. With the mech, you want to go for early engagements. You want to get cheap, cost-efficient items that help you fight now. And so that's where the Yule Scepter comes into play. Solo hanging around. He's actually scouts them out. Smoke breaks, and unfortunately they're unable to get any kind of initiation off. Crabpack wasn't able to get a Nightmare off in time. Very surprising to note that he's actually chosen to max out Nightmare just to increase the cast range. The duration is also nice as well, especially in these engagements, and they don't seem to be juggling the sleep. Usually you see Bane players leave it at 1, go for a few points up and Enfeeble, especially against a hero like a Wraith King who doesn't really have that much damage this early on. If you had a level 4 Enfeeble, you Enfeeble him in these fights, he's completely neutered, you can completely ignore him then, turn around, kill the rest of his team, and then engage, or even on the Invoker, since Invoker actually contributes a fair amount of right click. Cooldown going to be dropped, just going to be used to farm the creep wave. Understudy, this time looks like he's going for the BKB. Mithril Hammer already up on him. They're going to keep pressuring the Tattoo until they break it, since otherwise they're not going to accomplish all too much, especially with all 5 heroes grouped up. Well, at the bottom lane, double Forge Spirits up. The Zoo Invoker trying to do his thing. He's going to split push and at least make it a trade. So good recognition coming out from SSCT. Arrow flies out, Ended Rain almost catches it, decides wisely all he has to do is move to the left. Completely mitigates Mirana's most powerful ability. Exorcism clears it out. Even with the Venomancer wards, when they just group up as 5 and just run at you, there's only so much you can do. Understudy can actually choose to farm them up with the Flat King. He's going to be very careful. He's going to eat a Ray Fire Blast to the face. Gyrocopter is a very squishy carry. The reason why the BKB is so critical on him is it lets you get up in people's face and blow them up before you yourself get locked down or torn apart. Solo very close off his Blink Dagger. Once he has his Blink Dagger, he can look to start going for these engagements, but while I say that, Invoker has to be very careful. They're on the hunt now. They're sick of split pushing coming out from him. He wants to go for the Necro 3. Since Necro 3 also provides the added benefit of mana burning, especially on heroes such as the Death Prophet that are so dependent on their mana. And so he's going for it. The only other alternative is if he decides to go for a Yule Scepter, since it gives you that assassination combo where you Yule them up in the air, immediately follow up with the Sunstrike, definitely, then you invoke the Deafening Blast and the Meatball. You drop that combination on them and think it does something like close to 1,200 damage if you combo it perfectly. And since half of that is pure, since about 500 that's pure damage with a maxed out Sunstrike, pretty much instantly kills anyone that happens to get caught. But that being said, Necro 3 gives you a lot more teamfight presence. The movement speed also helps make up for the fact that you don't have any points in Wex and you're not going to be using Wex at all. So he's got that one value point of Wex to give him Deafening Blast, as well as the Ghost Walk if he needs to use it. Because otherwise, Invoker's a very slow hero. He's got the same movement speed as Crystal Maiden, 280. He's dependent on having points in Wex to give him that movement speed. Notra taking away creep aggro from Nether Squirrel. Anchor smashing away over in the bottom lane. We see the Venomancer. He's laying his house. He's dropping as many wards as possible. Trying to use them to delay the push coming out from the enemy team. Looks like he's on mech duty. But with the 4 deaths that he has, no kills and no assists, he's very style for gold. It's one of the reasons why Venomancer is such a powerful support hero is usually that you can find farm just by spamming wards, and that you can use your wards to detect incoming ganks. So whenever your wards off cooldown, you drop it like he's doing right now. So that way, if they happen to come in for a flanking ninja from the side, you can see them before they can act, unless they happen to be smoked. But in which case, they're investing a smoke to gank a 3-position Venomancer. So in terms of net worth, Gyrocopter by far lead the scoreboards, especially with the fact that he's just clearing out that ancient stack. That's a lot of gold going his way. He's got the same amount of net worth as the Invoker as well as the Wraith King combined. Wraith King's been playing very passive, deciding for whatever reason to go into to try to take into the late stage of the game by sitting there passively and farming. Even though his reincarnate's off cooldown, similar to a Juggernaut or a Luna, every time your ultimate is up, you want to go for an engagement, you want to get kills, so you know that if you stick around for too long, if you let the enemy team continue to farm, you're going to get kited, you're going to get bullied around with 4-star with Ghost Scepters, and it's very easy to mitigate your factor in team fights. But if you're constantly up in their face, if you're constantly applying pressure to them, taking towers, getting kills, then you can leverage yourself into a late game carry. Ancient Apparition still smoked up, but double smokes being brought up by Mirana, so both teams being very active with their Smoke of Deceits. Gyrocopter spots in Invis room, might be picking it up himself, or most likely going to be guarding it for somebody else. But there's not all too much to do with it. He's got his BKB up now, so 20 minutes into the game with FaZe, the Helm and the Dominant, the BKB as well as the SNY. Even though I'm not too big on the SNY pickup, he's able to do a lot. Cold actually drops, going to catch Invoker, might actually be able to kill him. Never mind, the Deafening Blast going to keep himself alive. He's going to invoke the Ghost Wall to try to keep himself alive. Actually, Invoke was on cooldown, never mind, he tried to invoke the Sunstrike and the Homing Missile is going to kill him! Fantastic plays coming out from TDT as they seem to punish the aggression coming out from the enemy team. Invoker, a lot of misplays coming out from him, Solo called him to sleep. Now that he's completely alone without any teammates, they could kill him, force him to waste his Reincarnate, and then kill him again. With the Anchor Smash, he's not going to do any damage at all. Dies, Reincarnate pops, and he's going to die once again. There's no way he'll be able to escape this. Actually, he's able to blink out. But immediate blink coming out from Notra, the Gypsy Fish, the Watermelon, call them what you want. The Tide spits on you. Sleep coming out, never mind, the Fiend Grip being committed. And they're going to kill a Wraith King and blow the Reincarnate. The Undercity is now beyond godlike. 21 minutes in, Gyrocopter's 11-0 for 1. It seems like teams have forgotten how to deal with the Gyrocopter. Even the Gyrocopter that happens to go Sanjay and Yasha. And they can start nibbling away at the Tier 3 and try to break high ground, or most likely they could go for either Roshan. Even though it's going to be spotted out right now, they actually can choose to contest Roshan, but never mind. GG's been called, they have enough, so 21 minutes and 30 seconds in the game. Game 1's in, so we're just going to take a quick break, and we'll load into game number 2 once the throne explodes. There we go. We'll be right back, stay tuned for more Doto.